Hi, and welcome back to Mr. Raymond's Civics EOC, where today we're going to be looking at candidates for political office. Now, last time we talked about the political parties, those Democrats and Republicans, and those pesky little third parties that try to influence the big ones. If you didn't catch that one, go back and check it out. Today we're going to be looking at candidates who run for political office. We see this through our benchmark. We need to evaluate candidates for political office by analyzing their qualifications, experience, issue-based platforms, debates, and political ads. So first off, a candidate is someone who is running for political office, whether that be for president, governor, mayor, representative in Congress. It doesn't matter what level. Most campaigns are pretty much the same. And second of all, we're going to be looking at qualifications for a candidate. And there are two definitions for qualify. The first, you must possess the necessary requirements for a position. For major federal positions in the national government, the U.S. Constitution tells us what the requirements are to run. So let's look at the president. Now, to be president of the United States, you must be what is called a natural-born citizen. And you remember this from our citizenship video. If not, be sure to check it out. And what this means is that the president must have been either born in the United States, or if born abroad or in another country, they must have been born to at least one U.S. citizen who had lived in the United States. And this is the only political position in which we have this requirement. I won't go into a lot of detail on why this is, except to say that at the time that the Constitution was written, the framers wanted to make sure the president was a loyal patriot. Other requirements for the president is that they must be 35 years old. Another thing to consider, and this was not in the original Constitution, but was added with the 22nd Amendment, is that the president can only serve 2 4-year terms. We'll go over these again in one of our upcoming videos about the president and the amendments. So in this picture, we see all of the current candidates running for president in the 2016 election. Now, most of these are Republican candidates. In our next video, we're going to learn about the process to narrow all of these candidates down to 2. Some other constitutional requirements that we touched on a previous video are that you must be 30 years old to be elected to the Senate. You must have been a citizen for 9 years and live in the state that you represent. For the House of Reps, it's 25 years old, citizen for 7 years, and live in the state where your district is located. Here we see one of Florida's 2 senators, Marco Rubio, who is running for president right now as a Republican candidate, and one of Florida's 27 reps in the House of Representatives, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is the chairperson of the Democratic Party, which is basically the head of the party. Now, requirements to hold office for more than 500,000 elected offices in America vary widely. Again, that's 500,000 elected officials in the United States. And it's impossible for you to know all of the requirements. For instance, to be the governor of Florida, here's the current one, Rick Scott, a Republican. He has to be 30 years old and live in the state for at least 7 years. He can serve more than 2 terms, but he can only hold office for 2 consecutively. To be the mayor of Miami, there is no age limit. You must be a resident of the district for at least 3 years, and there's no citizenship requirements. Another definition for qualify means that you possess the necessary skills or background to be successful at the job or position that you are running for. So what types of skills or experience are we looking for in a good candidate to vote for? One of the things we need to consider is the type of experience going to help that person do a good job at the position that they're running for. For most voters, that would have been serving in a government position that's similar or would help them carry out the position they're running for. So let's take running for the presidency. For the president, that might be serving as vice president. Although, of the 14 vice presidents who became president, 8 took over the role after the death of a sitting president, and only 4 were elected directly from being the VP. Although, certainly, Some, such as Truman and Johnson, who took over after the death of a sitting president, did go on to win their own elections. Other experience that has played well for presidential candidates would be governors. We see that 18 presidents were former governors, which makes sense since this is the chief executive of a state. 6 presidents served as Secretary of State, which is the advisor to the president on foreign affairs. And Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State for Obama, so maybe there'll be 7 presidents who were Secretaries of State. Another area of experience that voters have looked for in the president is military experience. 26 presidents have served in the military, including some genuine heroes pictured here. Now, education is certainly something that a lot of voters value, and above is a picture of our presidents who have attended Harvard alone. So at this point, the overriding theme I hope you're picking up on is that voters, for the most part, want someone with experience. Many who have run for governor have had experience in the state and national legislatures. Many a mayor have gotten experience by serving on town councils, and these are the local lawmakers. Now, there is a movement in recent years of looking for self-described quote-unquote political outsiders, people who haven't worked in the government before and can bring a different perspective to an elected position. And their popularity speaks more to the negative feelings about the job those who are in power are doing. However, for your exam, you want to look for candidates who have a lot of previous experience in elected government positions. Now, there is nothing more important to many voters when considering previous experience than the experience of already having served in the position they are running for. And this introduces us to a word you need to know, and that is incumbent. An incumbent is someone who is already serving in the position, who has to run again because their term is coming to an end. Now, we already mentioned some positions have term limits, such as the presidency, so you can only run twice for these positions. But other positions, such as being a senator or a rep in the House of Representatives, have no term limits, so you can run as many times as you want. Now, if an incumbent is doing a good job, they have a much better chance of being reelected than whatever new person is running against them. In fact, look at this chart. We see incumbents in the House being reelected about 90% of the time. One of the biggest reasons is that the people already know this person, and rather than taking a chance on someone they don't know, they'd rather stick with someone they do know. Now, to get a better idea of whether or not you agree with the views of a party or candidate, they release what is known as a platform. A platform is a statement outlining the views of a particular candidate or party. Platforms, are things that people stand up on so that people can see them. So think of an issue-based platform as showing the people what the candidate stands for. Here we see the Republican and Democratic platform for 2012. They describe where they stand on things like healthcare and guns and marriage. And if you need a refresher course, once again, check out our last video on the U.S. political parties. Here we see a recent Democratic Party platform stating their ideas about taxes and the environment, Medicare, which is free healthcare for the elderly, and Social Security, which is money for retirement. Those are the big expenses of the government. And here we see the Republican platform talks about the need for people to take more responsibility for themselves, making sure the government doesn't spend too much money, and limiting the size and responsibilities of the national government. So remember, a platform is where the parties or candidates stand on the issues. In addition to learning from the platforms, voters often look to political debates when trying to figure out who to vote for. A debate is usually a pretty civilized argument over the issues, although sometimes they can be fairly uncivilized and break into petty attacks on each other. Now, debates take place at all levels, and the big ones are usually televised. Early on in the election cycle, members of the same party will debate each other to determine who will represent the party, as we see down here from a recent Republican debate. And then the two parties will go up against each other to fight it out for the presidential election or whatever level election it is. Here we see a picture of Barack Obama debating Republican candidate Mitt Romney. Finally, candidates spend massive amounts of money running advertisements to get their message across to voters. And you're probably familiar with these during election season. All of these ads, some of them positive, a lot of them negative. For your test, you need to know some different factors about political advertisements. The first type of ads are what we call positive ads. This is when candidates talk about their experience and why they would do a good job. And here we see a candidate seeking to become an elected judge who is talking about her experience. I am the only candidate who served in every role of the court. Unfortunately, we see a lot less of these advertisements and more of negative ads. These are also referred to as attack ads, and you've probably seen these before, where one candidate will try to hurt the campaign of the other. Here is a Mitt Romney ad against Obama saying that he will raise your taxes. Now, one thing to remember is that political ads are required to state who is paying for the ad. Here we see paid for by the Romney campaign. You've probably heard the refrain at the end of these ads, "I'm Joe Smith and I approve this ad," because political ads often contain what is known as bias. Now, bias means to have strong prejudice for or against something. And if something is biased, we know that it might not be a reliable source of information. For example, if we asked a diehard One Direction fan to review their new album, we know that person is probably going to say how great it is, even if it's a bad album. The same is true with biased political advertisement. Here we see this ad was created by Barack Obama, so you know he isn't going to say something nice about Mitt Romney. A big issue in politics today is the amount of money being spent on campaigns. Think of how expensive all those political television advertisements cost. Candidates are spending millions and millions of dollars on campaigns. Here we see the amount of money spent on just a Florida Senate campaign at $72 million. For the 2012 presidential campaign, more than $1 billion was spent. And to raise all this money, candidates rely heavily on private donations. And there's a big concern that wealthy people and companies are getting special access and favors from politicians by making large donations. Now, there are limits on how much money a person or corporation can donate to a campaign, but candidates have found a loophole around the limits on donations, and these are called PACs, short for Political Action Committees. PACs are groups that raise money to support a particular party or candidate, and there are some limits on spending for PACs, but there are no limits on what are known as super PACs. A super PAC is an organization created to support a specific candidate or party, and these are formed by wealthy individuals or corporations that spend tens and hundreds of millions of dollars on advertisements, on campaign promotion to get the candidates that they support elected. They come up with anonymous sounding names like this one formed to get Mitt Romney elected called Restore Our Future, or this one for Obama called Priorities USA Action. And while the candidates are not supposed to have any direct contact with these groups, everyone knows these are created to get around the campaign finance regulations. And again, those are laws that limit how much a person or a group can give to a candidate. And according to this flyer, in a country of 300 million people, 26 people provided half of the super PAC funds. Again, hundreds of millions of dollars. And why are these super PACs controversial? Well, you have to ask yourself, why are these people spending so much money to get candidates they like elected? Are they looking to have special influence on these candidates when they get elected? Are candidates going to be more loyal to their donors than they are to the American people? Again, this is something that has become very controversial. And what you need to know is that campaign finance reform, this movement to enact real limits on how much money a person or a corporation can donate, is a big issue. And it's also trying to get control over the vast amounts of money being spent on elections. Now, In our next video, we're going to look closer at other influences on politics. But before we do, let's review. What do you call someone who is running for office? That one's easy, right? You call them a candidate. Where do you find qualifications for the president and U.S. Congress? These are the things that you must possess in order to hold this position. You find it in the Constitution. Okay, how long must a presidential candidate have been a U.S. citizen? For life. Remember, they must be natural born. What do you call someone who is running for re-election? So they've already been elected once. They are running for re-election, which makes them an incumbent. This is a statement of the candidate or party's stance on the issues. They tell us all of their opinions in this statement. It is called a platform. Candidates square off against each other at these. They're often televised. Their discussions and really their arguments, they are debates. What's the name for strong prejudice, either for or against someone, something, or a party? If you have this, you are considered biased or bias. Okay, so here is the state example of what you want to be able to answer. We have two campaign posters, and we see here that Maria Smith, she has 5 years as a city council member, while Todd Davis, he's only got 1 year as a Little League coach. Who are you going to vote for? Well, you're going to vote for Maria because she has more experience working in government. That one's pretty easy, right? Okay, what groups are formed to avoid limits on campaign donations? Yes, PACs or super PACs. All right, well, I want to thank you guys for watching. Up next, again, we're going to have video on media and interest groups in politics, and that should just about wrap us up as far as politics. We can get back to the government. And just to remind our teachers that this PowerPoint with a variety of lesson plans and activities is available for only $1.99 at Teachers Pay Teachers. Just search for Mr. Raymond Civics EOC Academy. I want to thank you guys again for watching. Be sure to subscribe.